From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Dan Harary, that's me. I always love when Mark Summers says my name, Dan Harary. I think that's so funny. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Dan Harary, broadcasting live in color from Beverly Hills. Not quite Hollywood, but close enough. Hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving holiday. And tonight I have a very special show that I think you'll enjoy. I recently interviewed my friend, the legendary singer Michelle Phillips. She rose to fame, as you probably know, as a vocalist in the musical quartet called the Mamas and the Papas in the mid-1960s. At the time, her voice was described by Time magazine as, quote, the purest soprano in pop music. A native of Long Beach, California, Michelle spent her early life in Los Angeles and Mexico City, raised by her widowed father. While working as a model in San Francisco, she met and married John Phillips in 1962. The couple went on to co-found the Mamas and the Papas in 1965, along with Denny Dougherty and Mama Cass Elliott. And Race, if we could show slide one, please. We can show, there they are. That's the Mamas and the Papas, you guys. Now, when I was a kid, man, they were on the radio all the time. They had so many hit songs, and they were just one of the most unique vocal groups. The Beatles, I think the Mamas and Papas and the Beach Boys, I think had the best vocal harmonies in history. Left to right in this picture, that's Denny Dougherty. Then we have Mama Cass. Michelle Phillips is the skinny blonde in the middle there. And then, of course, John Phillips, the genius who wrote all their songs on the far right. That's the Mamas and Papas in their heyday. I love that photo. Okay, Race, we can take that one down. The group rose to fame with their hit singles California Dreamin, Monday, Monday, Go Where You Want to Go, I Saw Her Again, 12:30, Creek Alley, and Dedicated to the One I Love, among others. They released 5 studio albums before they broke up in 1970. All right, Race, let's see number 2, please. That is the first album cover for the first Mamas and Papas record. They were not famous at this time. They were unknowns. And what I've been told is that this album cover was considered controversial in its day because of the toilet. That it's the first time a toilet bowl had ever been used on an album cover. And at the time when this was first sold, they put the sticker over the toilet bowl for the price of the record. They pasted it over the toilet because apparently it was a controversial thing at the time. Now, of course, it's nonsense. But there they are. That's right when they came out, and boy, were they huge. Man, were they big. Michelle Phillips is the last surviving member of the Mamas and the Papas. She and her husband, John, had a daughter named China Phillips, and China Phillips teamed with 2 of Brian Wilson's daughters to form a group in the 90s called Wilson Phillips. And you probably remember Wilson Phillips. They had a big hit song called Hold On. It's the number 1 song. Race, can we see number 3, please? That's the Mamas and Papas on the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, again, when I was a kid, Ed Sullivan Show, man, that was the show. Every Sunday night, my father and I watched that show religiously. And that's where Elvis debuted, and the Beatles, and the Stones, and everybody was on Ed Sullivan, including the Mamas and Papas. Last year, I befriended Michelle Phillips. I was doing PR for a famous Mexican restaurant here in Hollywood, and Michelle is their most famous client. So I used to see her at this restaurant, and Michelle Phillips and I became friends last year. I interviewed Michelle in her home in LA a few months ago, and on my show tonight, she discusses her history with the Mamas and the Papas, a little bit about her acting career, a little bit about some of her very famous boyfriends. Boy, Michelle, she dated everybody. Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, Dennis Hopper. She was the cat's pajamas in those days. And also, because my show is called Paranormal Tonight, Michelle had a UFO encounter with some friends in 1970 in Joshua Tree, California. She discusses her feelings about aliens and UFOs in this show tonight toward the end. Special thanks to my friend, Hollywood documentarian Vince Bucci, a good friend of mine. He shot and edited this unique pre-recorded episode of Paranormal Tonight. And also you'll notice in this interview, which I did recently, I had that full rabbinical beard, which I have since shaved, but although I haven't shaved in a few weeks, and it's starting to come back. So I may shave again. All right, Race, my brother, let's show the world Michelle Phillips talking about aliens and UFOs. Let's go. Tell me about, this is such a wonderful story. Tell me how you and John co-wrote California Dreamin. You were in New York.
It was the first real winter that I had spent in New York.
And you froze your ass off.
And when I was in San Francisco and I told my friends that I was going to go to New York, they said, oh, you better get yourself a nice wool dress. And, because the winters are brutal back there. I said, okay, so I went to Orbox and I bought myself an adorable little backless, sleeveless little wool dress and headed off to New York. And I didn't have any scarf or gloves or boots or, I mean, who can really imagine cold like that when all I knew was Los Angeles and Mexico City.
Right, and the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And even there it's chilly. But it's not
like chilly.
Not like New York.
That's when you put a jacket on,
Yeah, right.
So
what? No, is that 63, 64?
63, 62, 63.
Okay.
Yeah, but then Marshall said, he was a great banjo player and he was a great guitar player, and we got him. He was straight out of the Terriers, which was a very good group, and he used to play fabulous guitar and banjo in the Terriers. But we didn't have a real singer among us. Marshall sang just fine, and I sang just fine.
Yeah.
And John always just sang just fine.
And he was a baritone.
Yeah, but he wasn't a lead singer.
Right.
We didn't have a lead singer.
Yeah.
So when Marshall said he wanted to go back to New York and write for, nighttime television, and I don't know what, I couldn't imagine why he wanted to go back to New York to write, or what. Anyhow.
But he did. He certainly did.
He did. Yeah. He wrote for every nighttime show, and then he, of course, wrote Annie Hall with Woody Allen.
Right.
And he became just incredibly famous. So here we were without even a guitar player, and we had gone on the road on the southern lap of the Hootenanny tour,
right,
with a group. Well, there were like 6 different acts in the bus, and there was this group called the Halifax Three,
right,
and they had this fabulous tenor. I mean, just great tenor, Denny Doherty. So when we got back to New York, we heard that the Halifax Three had just broken up, and we leapt on it. We put the jungle drums out. We were looking for Denny Doherty.
Now, where was he? Was he back in Canada at that
No,
time?
he was in the village.
He was right there.
Yeah, and
that was luck. That was
he called and said, "I hear you're looking for me."
Wow.
And he came over and we started singing together, and it was like the whole sound changed. Here was a guy with this beautiful tenor voice.
What a voice.
And with John's vocal arrangements, and John was...
And your soprano on top.
And my soprano. And we had a group. But everywhere we went, he would get on the phone and he'd be talking to this girl. Everywhere we went, he always finished the night talking to this girl. So I said, who is it, your girlfriend? He says, no, she's not my girlfriend, but we were in a group together called the Mugwumps.
Right.
She was in the Mugwumps with me. And I said, oh,
Had you
good.
heard of the Mugwumps?
No,
Okay.
no. It was a group with John Sebastian and
Yeah.
and
Zev. What's his name? Zav.
yeah.
Yeah. You know who I mean.
Anyhow, Denny was in it. Cass Elliot was in it,
Right.
and a couple of others. I think
From the
they
Love
kind
and Love, they did the Love and Spoonful. Some of them.
Zalyanowski was
Yeah,
all in it.
That's what I'm thinking of. So,
Yeah. So, he wanted, when we got back to New York, he wanted to introduce us to his friend, Cass Elliot. And our pot dealer had just come by, and we had bought some pot. And then the guy said, would you like to try some LSD 25? And we said,
Okay.
yeah, what is it? He said, it's a psychedelic. What's that? Well, you'll love it. Take my word for it. So we bought 4. They came in sugar cubes.
Right.
And so I popped one, John popped one, Denny popped one. We waited for an hour, and I told the guys, as I went to open the door, because it was obviously Cass Elliot had arrived, and I passed them and I said, I don't know about you guys, but this drug does nothing for me. And then I opened the door and I came onto the acid, and here she was. She was 5'2", and she weighed a lot.
Right.
She was in a pink Angora sweater and a white pleated skirt and little white go-go boots. And I couldn't, I mean...
You must have thought you were hallucinating Mom Cass Elliot.
Right,
right?
I
You were
was. I was
hallucinating her.
definitely hallucinating.
You manifested Cass Elliot, and there she was.
So I said, listen, we've just taken this new drug called LSD 25. You want to take some? And she said, sure. And she took it. And we just had an evening that was unsurpassed by any evening I've ever had. Yeah. And she had a big crush on Denny.
Yeah, right. They were like closer than best friends, weren't they?
They were very close friends, but they weren't having a physical relationship. They were just best of friends.
Yeah.
As much as Cass would have liked to
Be more.
Yeah, it didn't. But
that was the birth of the Moms and the Papas, really, that night.
That night.
That night.
January 9th, 1965.
That's when it was? You know the exact date?
Yeah. I know the exact date.
Yeah.
And that's when they put a scarf over my eyes, and we had a big map on the wall of the world. And they said, okay, and they gave me, I think I had a dart. I can't think of anything else that would have done this, because they turned me around and then they say, okay, throw the dart, because that's where we were going to go. And I threw the dart and it landed right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And Denny went up to the dart and he takes it and he says, and then they swam over to the Virgin Islands.
You remember that?
Yeah. And so that's where we decided to go.
Right.
We're going to the Virgin Islands.
To get away from
We
New
knew
York.
nothing. It was time to take a sabbatical.
Yeah.
And that's became very clear to us when we were on acid. By the way, I do not think that anybody who did not take acid in the 60s should try it now, because it's just not the same. It wouldn't be the same. And it might even be dangerous. You never know. We were getting it from a lab that was producing this for like Leary and,
pure, the real stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so don't take any acid now. I'm not condoning that.
Right. So you're in the Virgin Islands. The 4 of you. Cass came a little bit later.
Cass came a little bit later.
And you were there. Mackenzie was there. She was a little girl.
She might have been there.
Yeah, it's in your book.
At that
It's
point.
in your book.
She was there for a little bit, and then she went home.
And that's really when the Mamas and Papas became a unit.
Well,
right? A team.
we were singing every day and every night together, and we were on the beaches of St. John with tents, and you know, we were like a little commune because my sister was there with her boyfriend Peter Palafian, and Dr. Horde was there, Eric Horde, the guitar player. He became our lead guitar player on the road.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And, you know, we had like big bonfires and lots of drink, and you know, my sister was cooking for everybody on the grill. And it was really, really fun.
Yeah.
We never got out of our bathing suits. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, this big guy came by with what do you call them? That holds ice, an ice chest. He would come up with an ice chest, and he had all these coconuts, these cold coconuts, and he would take a machete and chop the top of the coconut off, and then he'd take a bottle of rum and he'd pour the rum into the coconut. Then he'd put a straw in it, and that was our breakfast every morning.
Wow.
And we snorkeled, and we took the catamaran out every full moon.
Now, this is before any of the hit songs were written. Is that correct? Or did you have...
California Dreamin was written.
Before you went to the Virgin Islands?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about... I know you and I think...
And we were singing other songs. I don't know what we were singing.
You and John were in New
we
York. You were freezing and...
And we also had Go Where You Want to Go.
Oh, right. Okay.
That was already part of the repertoire.
Okay.
And but then when we finally got to Duffy's, we went back to Charlotte Amalie, and because we were broke, you know, we didn't have any money.
You maxed out your American Express card. They cut your American Express card with
yeah,
scissors.
right. They had cut it right in front of us. It was horrifying. And so we were playing at Duffy's, and John wanted Cass to get up on stage with us and be part of the group, but she didn't want to do it. She became a waitress,
right.
And she was singing the fourth part.
In the back of...
on
the side.
you know, with
your trays.
beers on both hands. You know, she was singing the fourth part. It was really kind of funny. But one morning we were sitting at Duffy's, and we were all drinking beer, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and the radio was on, and Mr. Tambourine Man comes on.
The Birds version.
Yeah, and we're listening to them, and Cass says, "Is that the Birds?" Because the Birds that we knew were just a small group in LA that opened for bigger acts at the Troubadour. They weren't. I mean, it was the Birds. You know, they were a little nothing group, as we had been at some time, you know, or another. But I remember John said, "Well, you know, we got to get back to LA, because if the Birds can have a hit, anybody can have a hit."
Right. Yeah, that's very cool.
So, back to LA. We managed to get back to LA after I threw 17 straight passes at the crap table.
Right. That's a whole other story. In Jamaica.
No, it was in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Yeah. All of that's in your book. All right, so tell me about California Dreamin. How John had some of it. He asked you for some help. You gave him some.
Oh, that was
lines.
a question you asked me
No.
hours ago.
Yeah, that's
okay.
It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a
I
very.
got
it
off
was,
track.
It was an interactive song. The two of you wrote that song.
Yeah.
So tell me how the genesis.
Oh, well, actually what happened was a few days earlier, we were walking up Fifth Avenue, and I saw this beautiful church. And I said, "What is that?" And he says, "That's
St. Patrick's Cathedral.
St. Patrick's Cathedral."
Right.
I said, "Well, let's go inside." And John was very anti-religion, and he had gone to Catholic military schools from the time he was 7 years old. And if anything could turn you off of religion faster, I can't imagine anything than going to a Catholic military school.
Right.
So he didn't want to go in. And I said, "Well, I'll go in and I'll come right out. I just want to see the inside." So I don't think it was that night, but a few nights later, John was up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, strumming his guitar and writing a song. And he woke me up and he says, "Michelle, listen to this. I'm writing a really good song. Listen to this." And all the leaves are brown and the sky is gray. Anyhow, he sings through the first verse of California Dreamin. And I groggily said, "That's really great, John. It's really pretty."
And you went back.
And he says, "Wake up, help me write it." And I said, I'll help you write it tomorrow morning." He said, "No, wake up, help me write it now." So the only thing that I wrote for California Dreamin was the second verse about the church.
Okay, so can you give it to us? Give us the verse. Stopped into a church.
Stopped into a church. I saw along the way, I got down on my knees and pretend to pray.
Now, but on the record, it says one person says pretend and one person says begin.
Yeah.
Right? Because every time I
Cass
hear
said
that song,
begin.
Cass said begin to pray.
Everybody is,
pretend. So
it wasn't until we were doing a sound check someplace in the Midwest, that I said, "What did you just say?" We're doing a sound check with California Dreamin, and she says, "I got down on my knees and I began to pray."
So she always thought that was the line.
Yeah.
But the other three have said pretend.
Yeah.
So on the record, it's both.
It's both.
Yeah.
And I said, "That's not the lyric." And she said, "Yes, it is." I said, "I wrote the lyric. I should know what the lyric is."
That was not my word.
And so you can have it either way, whatever you want. It's on the record. Begin, pretend.
It's both. It's really both.
Yeah.
It works both ways.
Whatever you want.
Preacher like the coals. Did you write that part too?
Yeah. He knows I'm gonna stay.
So you wrote that. That's
all I wrote. He wrote the melody. He wrote the rest of the song, and but.
So that's before you went to the Virgin Islands. So in the Virgin Islands, you guys were performing California Dreamin at Duffy's.
At Duffy's, yeah.
Okay, people must have been like, "Holy God, what a wonderful song!"
Well,
was it magic? Was it magic at that time?
No. It became magic when you have Hal Blaine and Neri Knechtel and Joe Osborne.
The Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew playing, when you really had a track.
Yeah.
And then you really had, John really started writing the arrangement, the vocal arrangement for it. And then it was magic. Yeah.
But still, it's a wonderful song. It's a wonderful song. Still.
Yeah. Thank you.
Glenn Campbell? Did he play on some of your songs as well? He was in the record.
Glenn Campbell used to play lead guitar for us a lot, but it was before he became famous.
Before he became Glenn Campbell.
And he was so adorable, and he also sang really well.
He was gifted.
Yeah.
He really was gifted. Okay, so you became very close friends, obviously, with Mama Cass.
Yeah.
Along the way. On occasion, you had differences of opinion.
Like with Denny.
because she was so smitten with him, and you know, she was gifted obviously, but she wasn't as beautiful as you were, and so there must have been some resentments and things like that. But what was she like as your friend, and how did she react to the success of the group, and what are some of your more like fond stories that you might have about
Well,
Cass?
you know, Cass did not want to join the group. And when we were in the Virgin Islands, John was begging her to join. Well, she had joined the group in a sense, because when we sang, all four of us sang.
Right.
And that's how, you know, John would say, Michelle, you sing this, and Cass, you sing this, and
Right.
Denny, you sing
Right.
this. Here we go. You know, so we were singing 4-part harmony. And, but when we got to Duffy's, she would not go on stage. And John said, "What's the matter with you?
She didn't have stage fright, did she?
No." She said,
was-
"I am never going to let an audience make the obvious distinction between me and Michelle."
I see.
And John just said, "Cass, this is not a beauty contest. This is a vocal group."
Did she say that out loud?
Yes,
she
she said that. "I will never," these are her exact words.
I believe you, yeah.
"I will never let an audience make the obvious distinction between me and Michelle." And when we finally got to California, and we ran into her at Barry McGuire's house,
Right.
because we went to Barry McGuire's house. We didn't know, we didn't have any place else to stay,
Right.
and she answered the door. And this was just 2 or 3 weeks after we had heard, Do you believe in magic? I mean, I'm sorry,
Eve of Destruction?
Eva, no.
Yeah, do you believe in magic? Eve of Destruction.
The
Bert?
what was the Dylan song?
Mr. Tambourine Man?
Mr. Tambourine Man. So now here we are with Barry, who has a #1 song
Eve
at
of
this point,
Destruction,
Eve of
right.
Destruction.
Right.
And he takes us in. Of course, he was very good natured, and he takes us in, and we were singing our repertoire for him. And he said, "You know, I really think you should go see my producer. His name is Lou Adler, and he's got a small label, and he's a really great guy. He's real cool, and you know." So the next day we went to sing for Lou Adler.
But now Cass went with you.
But she had agreed to only go with us for the audition.
Okay, so she was okay to record maybe, but didn't want to be on the stage.
No. She didn't want to record with us. She only was going to go for the audition so that we would get the job.
Oh, that was the intention?
That
And then if you
is
got
exactly
signed,
what she said.
she was going
And
to
then
walk away?
after we sang for Lou, and he said, "You know, why don't you guys come back tomorrow around 3:00 and we'll discuss this some more?"
Right.
So that's what we thought we were going to do when we went back the next day. And when we got there were contracts all over the floor, and they were handing out pens to everybody and saying, "You know, we want to make this deal with you." And she was the first one to get down there and start signing her name on the,
Wow.
you know,
So you and
because
John
she
must have-
wanted to work.
So you and John must have been like, oh, what is she doing? Wow.
Well, you know, John said, "You know, Lou, we have been around the block a couple of times ourselves, you know, and we want some stuff from you
Yeah.
before we sign.
Right. A car and some money.
We want a car, we want a place to live, we want some money, we want to ensure that there's a case of Crown Royal at every
Recording
at
session?
every recording session, and a case of Marlboro Reds."
And he said yes.
And then they said, "Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, Lou Adler knew.
Yeah.
He knew. He had good ears.
yeah."
But that's interesting. Cass was the first one to sign.
So she was down on her knees, signing her name.
I never heard
because,
that before.
Because she, all she ever wanted to do was work, and we were going nowhere in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
You know.
That was like your cavern club for the Beatles, or like when the Beatles went to Hamburg.
Yeah.
And, you know, in Hamburg they played 20 hours a day, and they
Right.
lived on pills.
Yeah.
And they got really good at their chops. And then they came and became the Beatles.
Yeah.
So your Virgin Islands, that was your
That's where we
that was your Hamburg.
created that sound.
That was
That's
your Hamburg.
And it wouldn't have been at all the same without Cass. I mean, obviously Cass was such a great addition to the group. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I heard what we sounded like with Cass. I mean, it was
magical.
It was incredible enough to have Denny sing with us, but to have Cass and Denny singing with us, all of a sudden we sounded great. And we knew it.
And she knew it too.
And she knew it. And so she was on board. But you know, the reason she didn't come down to the Virgin Islands with us in the first place was because she had to do the Danny Kaye show.
Oh.
And so she was already, you know, working as a soloist. And she was...
Her intention was to become a solo person.
Yeah.
But
and
then,
hopefully to play on Broadway, because that was her big thing.
You sang for Lou Adler and he signed you, she's like, okay, I better catch this train.
Yeah.
This is my train, it's in my hand.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna let it go. So after she signed, she never said to you or John, hey, I don't want to be on stage with you.
Hell no.
That was the end of that conversation. that was the end of that.
We were working, the single was climbing up the charts. It was more than we could have ever hoped for. And California became a huge hit after it broke in Boston, about a month after it was released. And we were about to release Go Where You Want to Go, because California Dreamin' looked like it had stalled on the charts. And then it broke in Boston, and it broke all over the world. And it went to number 4 on the Billboard charts, not to number 1. Because in those days, you had so many people, so much talent.
Did the Beatles have number 1?
We had the Beatles, we had the Stones, we had all of Motown. We had all of the British Invasion.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you were really clawing your way up past, you know, if you were in the top 10, that was great. But to get to number 1, that was almost impossible.
So California Dreamin' was number 4.
Number 4.
How about Monday, Monday?
Number 1.
That hit number 1.
And that was a song that Cass and I hated. I mean, I remember Cass and I were playing gin. And he came out with his guitar and he said, you know what, I want to write a song with universal appeal. And we're going, well, that's a really good idea, John. Write a song with universal appeal. And he goes back into the bedroom and he comes back out a few minutes later, or maybe, I don't know how long it was, but he comes out and he says, listen to this. Monday, Monday. Can't trust that day. Monday, Monday, somehow it just turns out that way. What do you think? And I said, John, that's the most pretentious song I've ever heard. And the Cass agreed with me, and Denny was kind of like on the fence about it. And John was very hurt. He said, well, I think it's a good song. And we said, well, we don't. And Lou came out and he says, well, sing it for me. So we sang it for him, and he said to us, to Cass, and to me and Cass, he says, what's the matter with you? This is a great song.
So once you heard it as it sung, did you say, oh yeah, there's something here?
No.
You still didn't think it was?
I didn't like
so
it.
That must have really shocked
I said,
you.
all the ba-da-da-das and all that, I said, ugh. Well, it's funny what happens when a record just takes off and goes straight to number 1. Then Cass and I really liked the song.
Yeah, sure, of course, I can imagine. You became fond of it then.
Yeah. And I remember we had a press conference and Cass and I were saying, you know, we told Johnny he had to write a song with universal appeal.
You turned it.
And he did.
You turned it around.
Yeah, we turned it all
That's
around.
so
The
funny.
big hypocrites that we were.
That's really great. Okay. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit just for a moment. I told you earlier that I have become involved with the UFO research community. I've seen 3 UFOs in my life, and I wrote a book called After They Came, which I've gifted to many of these UFO people, and they've befriended me. So I'm friends with quite a few of these guys now. And what I've learned and studied over the last 20 years, in my opinion, is that there's a lot of truth behind the extraterrestrial presence. There's a lot of government secrecy and cover-ups and things. I have friends in Washington who are working on what's called disclosure. Disclosure is the day the President of the United States goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have something to tell you. We've known about this for 80 years. Extraterrestrials have been here. We know all about it. It was national security. Sorry, we couldn't tell you, but now's the time." That's called disclosure.
But you've seen 3.
I've seen 3. One with my father, I was 14. One with my son in 96 near Edwards Air Force Base.
How many times have you taken acid?
0. 0. So this
Okay,
leads me
that's
to my
good.
story. So yeah.
Okay,
So you
so
told me last year when we became friends that you once had a UFO encounter,
I did.
and I want to hear the whole from A to Z, that whole experience and what you think it all was and meant.
Well, it was a brief encounter.
Okay. Okay.
Anne Marshall, who you probably know from
Yes.
the book,
She
who's my
was-
best friend.
And she was one of John's lovers.
Lovers, yes. But then she became our
Yes.
assistant,
Right.
and then she became my best friend.
Right.
Or actually,
You were
The
closer.
other way
You were
around,
closer with
yeah.
her than John, probably.
Yeah. But Anne Marshall, Scott McKenzie, and I went to Joshua Tree. I think Scott was already living there.
Now, do you know what year? It was the 60s, 70s?
Oh, it was probably 70,
1970.
right around there.
Okay.
And so we were all at the Joshua Tree Inn, and we decided to go out into the park, into Joshua Tree Park, which is expansive, you know. And we dropped some acid. Once again, that little drug comes up.
Was it that LSD 25?
It was still that LSD
Yeah.
25.
Boy, you know, I would do that with you.
Yeah.
I've never done it in my life, but I would do that with you. Okay, so
But-
you're in the
And I
desert.
remember we just wanted to see the sky,
And relax. Probably.
and you could see everything in the sky in Joshua Tree because there was no pollution,
Right.
and it was magical. It was really beautiful, and we were laying out on this blanket, and we're looking at the stars, and we see this light that looks like a big star, but it's moving at a very interesting speed, because we were saying that can't be that's too fast for a satellite, and it's too slow for a plane,
Okay.
and we were all trying to figure out what it was. When it stopped mid-air and went tss, 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 tss.
Like the mark of Zorro?
Yeah.
Was it like this? Like
It did the bark of Zorro, and then it went exactly back to its original place and continued over our heads and disappeared. And the 3 of us are lying there because we were all watching it very closely when this happened. And we were all saying, did you see that? Did you see what it did? Did you see what that light did? And we all knew exactly what it did. We all had the same story. And I I just said, I think we just saw an extraterrestrial. And, whenever I tell the story,
Yeah.
people say, yeah, but you were on acid. But it wouldn't have mattered if we were on acid or not. We all saw the same thing. And we have no...
And the three of you discussed it with each other, so you all
Absolutely.
saw the same thing. So you weren't all tripping that. You saw it in real life.
Right.
You saw it. What color was the light? Do you remember?
It was
Yellow?
just a light.
White, yellow?
It was white.
Was it a large, like an orb? Could you see the shape of it? Oval, round?
No, it's just a light.
It just was there, zip, 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 and then it went back.
Yeah.
And then it slowly went like, but I think the zip, zip,
It
zip.
went straight back to the same
Starting point.
starting point that it's when
I think
the
this
zig,
was
zig,
a
zig.
show for you. I think, see? It was putting out a little show.
Yeah.
Really? Because you're telling this story 50 years later.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about that? Do you think there's extraterrestrial life visiting Earth? Do you think it's been a cover-up? What, just personal, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you something. I deal in facts. I deal in science.
Okay.
I do not deal in mythology. I do not deal in gossip or hearsay. If you can't prove it to me, I can't accept it. And you know what? There are a billion things that we do not know. We think we know so much, we know nothing. I do know that. Or as I think Plato said, that there is one thing he knows for sure, that he knows nothing.
That's a really great one.
And that's pretty much where I stand on extraterrestrial.
So extraterrestrial. So you
so
probably,
hard
it
to
sounds
say.
like you're open to the possibility.
Oh,
that they're
absolutely.
here.
I would love, if there really are those things and the government knows about it,
Yeah.
I would love for that transparency to be shown.
Well, I have
To the world.
I have partners in Washington working on that.
Good.
Literally working on that right now. They meet with Chuck Schumer all the time. That's in the works. That may happen this year.
I mean,
It may happen this
so
year.
many people have seen
Yes.
amazing things, and I don't think these people are lying,
No.
but I still don't know, because I have no facts. And if anybody has any facts, I want to know about them. If we've seen a space person, maybe dead, that landed somewhere
Roswell. Yeah.
at Roswell, I would love to know if that's a fact. And what do you have to back it up?
Right.
But I don't believe in miracles. I don't believe in angels. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any kind of mythology. I love to go to churches because there's architecturally so amazing. But I'm not a religious person at all. My daughter is a total religious fanatic, but
Interesting.
love her dearly. Everyone is entitled to their own
Sure.
to their own thoughts
Beliefs.
and beliefs.
So you're very practical. If Joe Biden went on TV and had a little alien there, and there's a craft smoking flames, and said, "Listen, here's our friend from Venus. He's real. He's a real deal. Extraterrestrials are real. We've known for a long time. He wants us to tell you." You'd say, "Oh, okay. Well, there you go."
All right.
Yeah,
Now,
there it is.
now we've got something to work with.
Right, exactly. So you're very practical. You're a pragmatist. Okay, I got that. So changing gears, Michelle, you've been an actress as well. In addition, after your singing career, you segued more into acting. You've been in movies and TV shows. You were in Knots Landing, a show called That's Life, and a show called Seventh Heaven. Those were popular shows. How would you compare and contrast your singing music career with your, acting, showbiz, TV film career? Similarities, differences? What are your thoughts?
Well, there is one important aspect to this. I spent 2.5 years in the group and 25 years in television and film.
Good point.
And I had a wonderful time acting. Acting is so much fun. Now, the truth is that singing, and especially singing John's parts and the stuff that we were doing, which was very sophisticated stuff, was hard work. Acting was not quite hard work. You wouldn't consider it, chain gang stuff, It was just gloriously fun.
Wow.
And I got Dillinger. I didn't even read for it. John Milius just looked at me in my shorts and my dirty t-shirt and my hair in braids, and he said, "You got the part." I said, "Okay." So I did Dillinger.
You had an agent at the time, I guess.
Huh?
Did you have an agent?
Yeah.
A theatrical agent?
At that point, I did have an agent.
Did Jack Nicholson ever help you get an agent? Or
I don't remember.
Parts or anything?
I don't remember how I got Bob Raison, but Bob Raison was a great agent. He'd represented a lot of people. I probably got it through Dennis Hopper because he also represented Dennis.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So.
So you did Dillinger, but that's with the
did
Tommy
Dillinger.
gun that you were telling me
That
about.
was the Tommy gun scene, yeah. And actually, I was nominated for a Golden Globe for that. But after Dillinger, I couldn't get arrested. And there's this thing where actors don't like it when singers come and want to be actors, and it's true the opposite way around too.
Right.
And I can understand that. It's kind of like, don't step on my property here, But Larry Gordon, who produced Dillinger, finally called Aaron Spelling, and he said, "Aaron, I've got this girl here, Michelle Phillips. She did a great job for me on Dillinger. She got nominated for a Golden Globe, and now she can't even get in to read for anything." He said, "Do you have anything for her to do?" And Aaron says, "Is she available Monday morning?"
I think so. Yeah, let me check. Yeah, I think so.
And I did my first movie of the week. And besides all the other people that I worked for and other movies that I did, I worked with Aaron Spelling for 25 years.
So he was a mentor to you in the acting area.
Oh, he was just such a great producer.
Was he a Mamas and Papas fan? He probably was.
I don't think
Did
we
you
ever discussed that, but
Really?
he loved me.
But he knew you. You were.
And Candy loved me. It was important to have Candy on your
The
side.
wife, yeah.
That was his wife. And he was like the stable, that actors could learn a lot working with him, because he gave everybody an opportunity. And I was the mermaid on Fantasy Island. I did 4 Love Boats. I did every show that he had on the air. I was on Beverly Hills 90210 for 5 years.
Did he do Charlie's Angels?
Yeah,
Were you in any of those?
that was before my time.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, Charlie's Angels, there were those 3 girls.
That was the early 70s.
Yeah, but I did so much work with him, and he didn't have any fear of taking unknown actors and giving them a chance, and I will always love him for that. And I just found a letter where he thanked me for doing a show that he had asked me to do, in Vancouver, and it was not a big show, but he wanted to get it going, and I agreed to do it. And he just he would call me personally and thank me for taking a role.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's exception to the rule.
Yeah, it is. He really was an exception to the rule.
Yeah. So he really helped your career for quite a long time.
Absolutely. He got me started, and he gave me a lot of encouragement. I went on to do not a lot of movies, but I worked with Rudolf Nureyev on Valentino, and I also worked with Audrey Hepburn and James Mason and Omar Sharif in a really awful movie called Bloodline.
Another one.
And but I really loved working with these legends, and I worked until I was 62 years old, and then I really decided that I was not getting parts that I really wanted to do, so I thought, why don't you retire? And I did.
So it sounds like you had more enjoyable fun acting.
I did.
Whereas singing was more of a disciplined work for you.
Yeah.
Even
and I'm glad that I did it, because, listen, that's what people remember me for more than anything.
Sure.
They remember me as a member of the Mamas and the Papas.
And we're back, and hope you all liked that interview with Michelle Phillips. Again, she is a very lovely person, a very gifted person. She's 80 years old now. Michelle Phillips turned 80 earlier this year. And I was at her home when I did that interview that you just saw. She's just a lovely person. She has so many great stories. What you saw on that interview was edited down. I was at her house for almost 4 hours. So there's other material that she spoke about, including some of her very famous boyfriends. But she's a lovely person. I'm very honored that Michelle Phillips is a friend of mine. You know, one of the major 60s rock music icons is a personal friend of mine. And as a child of the 60s, growing up with her music on the radio all the time when I was a kid, it meant the world to me to hang out with Michelle Phillips. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And we're on live every Thursday night here on the wonderful UnX Network, live from Hollywood Paranormal Tonight. We're on live every Thursday night, 6 to 7 Pacific, 9 to 10 Eastern. I hope you all have a good week, and I will see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Stick with us. We have a lot of good guests coming up in 2025 as well. Happy holidays. Thanks, everybody.